Hey everybody, Fletch from All Things Overlanding here. On today's episode of the podcast / vlog, I'm going to be talking a little bit about something that I was thinking about the other day, which is why all of a sudden, it seems like, has overlanding just exploded, right? Like, why is it so popular now? And I'm sure that there are, hundreds of reasons why. So I'm kind of going to give my big three that I think are the biggest factors that are contributing to this. But again, I'd love, as always, to hear from you guys in the comments below. If you think of something else, or if you think maybe I'm wrong on something, comment down below. Just let me know what your thoughts are and what you think is contributing to it. And maybe even your own reason, right? Like, why did you get into overlanding? Why all of a sudden have we, decided that this is something that we love and we're super passionate about, to the point where you guys are listening to this podcast, right? Or watching me on YouTube. So I'd love to hear from you guys on that too. But right here I'm going to throw up, I wanted to kind of prove that overlanding has exploded, right? That it's not just a perception thing. There's this tool from Google called Google Trends. If you're not familiar with it, you can Google Trends and it'll pull up. But I'm going to put a little picture right up here showing you what the Google Trends data shows. They started Google Trends in about 2004. So I'm going to show you what the trend shows on Google Trends for the word overlanding. So as you can see, it's basically a hockey stick, right? So in the last couple of years, it's gone from, almost nothing straight up into the sky. And people are looking for, content about overlanding. And that may be what brought you here too on YouTube to this channel and this video. So again, what I'm going to cover is just a few of my thoughts on what I think is contributing to this boom, if you will. So if you want to hear more about that, stay tuned. And also, if you're new to the channel, I just wanted to really quick say welcome. And I also wanted to say, if you're into overlanding stuff, if you're new to overlanding, if you like gear reviews, camping, Nissans, because I drive a Nissan, but this applies to all vehicles when we're talking about overlanding, and trip reviews and reports and things like that, definitely consider clicking that subscribe button down below. You'll also see in the description links to my other forms of communication. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I have a podcast, as I mentioned, or if you're listening on the podcast, I'm on YouTube. So just search for All Things Overlanding pretty much anywhere you go, and you'll find me. So again, thanks for stopping by, and we'll get the video started now. All right, guys, welcome back. So as I mentioned, on today's episode, I'm going to be talking about a few things that I think are contributing to the explosion of the word overlanding and the practice of overlanding, right? So the first sort of topic that I want to talk about is the term control. And this can mean a number of things, right? So when I'm talking about control, what I'm saying is, I feel like personally, and again, you guys let me know in the comments if you feel the same way or you agree with this, that in a lot of ways nowadays we have far less control than we've ever had before in our lives. And again, what I mean by that is like, you may be in a job that you hate, but you have to make money, you have to pay your bills, so you just have to stick with it and keep doing it, right? Now, I personally love my job. If my boss is watching, I'm not talking about my job right now, but as a fact in the past, I've had quite a few jobs where I was like, I really don't like this job, but I need to stick it out until I either find something better or until I can make more money doing something else, right? So that's one of the things. There just seem to be rules everywhere, right? Like, I live in a neighborhood in the northeast side of Indianapolis, and we've got an HOA. I can't have a shed. I can't have certain things parked in my driveway. Like, there's just all these rules, and there are a ton of people that are constantly watching for them, right? Your grass is just that much too tall, so we're going to call the HOA and you're going to get a letter about it, right? So you just kind of feel like people are always kind of coming down on you. The same with laws too. Now, I'm not a huge hunter or fisherman or anything like that, but I'm sure that a lot of you that are would agree, like, there's so much licensing and just so many like rules and regulations, and you can only do, hunt during this time or that time, and you can only fish in these places during this season. So it just seems like there are a lot of rules and a lot of people telling us what to do, right? Taxes, things like that, right? So a lot of you, if you're libertarian or something, I don't know what I am personally, but I think I lean more towards libertarian probably. there's all these rules that you have to follow. There's all these things that seem kind of out to get you. And I don't want to sound like a conspiracy nut, and I don't want to sound like I'm super paranoid or anything like that. But I just think that all those things add up, and then they kind of make us feel like, we don't have a lot of control over our lives, right? But with overlanding, it gives you some of that control back, right? Like, you have the ability to, within your budget, select whatever kind of rig you want, right? Like, there are a ton of guys that have Toyotas. There are a ton of guys that have Jeeps. I personally said, man, I want to be different, and I love my Nissan, so I'm going to get an Xterra. And that's what I did. When I go on a trip, I get to choose my route, Like, when I'm going to work, I have like one, maybe two ways that I can get to work. And they're boring, and they suck, and there's traffic, and it's awful, right? If I'm on an overlanding trip, and again, the journey is the destination, right? Like, the journey is the real goal of what you're trying to do. If you run into traffic, you hop off the highway and you go on a little back road. You go exploring. If you want to, take super treacherous, tough trails and test out your rig, you can do that. If you'd rather just take some gravel roads, fire roads and things like that, you can do that. So you have control over your route as well. The customization to your vehicles, right? It's amazing to me, all the different modifications that I see and all the different vehicles and things like that, because everybody does it differently, right? Like, within the Xterra world, if you will, I tried to make mine different from everybody else's. And when I look at every single rig, there are just a ton of really cool, really unique vehicles. And yet at the same time, I feel like overlanders as a whole, and I've kind of talked about this before, are very positive and supportive of each other. So like, you may have another Xterra owner that has, a $2,000 super expensive bumper, and that's awesome. And I'm going to go up and I'm going to say, man, that bumper is awesome. But then those same people will come up to mine with my little Wham, hidden bumper that's like a $400 bumper, and like my winch hidden in the bumper, and I just cut the middle section out to make it unique and make the bumper fit and make it look kind of OEM. And they'll come up and say, wow, I really like how you did your bumper. That's really cool too. So I think that gives you back some of that control, right? Like, you can pick what modifications make sense for you. If you need a drawer system, build a drawer system. If you need a rooftop tent, get a rooftop tent. So I like that too. Another way that you can get control back is food choices, right? Like, I feel like when I'm at home, I'm so busy all the time that we don't even hardly ever have time to cook food. We order in a lot, we'll go out to eat a lot, or we'll just eat crap like a frozen pizza or something like that because it's quick and it's easy. So when I'm at home, you would think that I would have more time, but I don't, because I'm so busy with everyday life, right? I'm so busy, taking care of the kids or working or traveling to and from work. And so when I go out to go overlanding, like, food is kind of like the highlight of the day, right? Like, it's sort of like how the journey is the goal. The food is the goal for me too. So like, I would rather not just run through a drive-through at a McDonald's when I happen to go through a town, because that's boring and I could do it at home. So I'll look for like a really cool, unique diner, or I'll, do some research before I go on a trip and find some really cool restaurants that I want to hit up while I'm on the trip. Or you bring the food with you, and then that's part of the adventure too, right? And you have control over that. You can, cook hot dogs, or you could bring like Lunchables and stuff like that, and you don't have to do anything if you just want to be lazy and be quick. Or you can choose to like get the scuttle and like do it up fancy, bring steaks and potatoes and all kinds of stuff. So you have control over that too. And then just being yourself, right? Like, again, with everything just sort of stacking up on you, I feel like I'm kind of a different person when I'm around my house and around town, and but then when you get out there and you're by yourself in the woods, or you're with just a couple close friends in the woods and you're hanging out, like, you can just kind of relax and actually like take some deep breaths and not be stressed, because you don't have, the emails binging, and you don't have all the interruptions coming in. You can just relax and be yourself. So that's the control piece. That was kind of part one. The second part of what I think is contributing to why overlanding is exploding is perception. And what I mean by perception is, especially nowadays with social media, like, there's just so much judgment, right? And there's so many people that are so sort of vain and worried about what everybody thinks. And, we all want to buy fancier cars, and we all want to look like we have more money than we do, and we all want to act like our lives are perfect and nothing ever goes wrong, right? And so we get kind of wrapped up in that perception when you're around a bunch of other people, when you're looking at your neighbor's new, car, or you're looking at your neighbor's new roof or whatever, new fence or something, and you're like, man, I wish I had $6,000 to put a fence up, or stupid stuff that doesn't matter, right? But so overlanding lets you kind of show your personality. It lets you control the perception that people have of you by being comfortable with your vehicle. Like, I guess what I'm saying there is overlanding to me makes me care less about what people think of my truck, because when I drive my truck through like my neighborhood, people are like, they hear the MTs coming down the road and and they see the solar panel and they see like dings and dents and scrapes and nicks and rusty spots on the truck and stuff and the black steel wheels, and they're just like, ooh, what's the deal with this guy? Like, and especially after you go on a trip, if it's covered in mud or sand or dirt or whatever, and it's just filthy and you're like, you don't fit in. A lot of people I feel like care about that stuff, but because I love overlanding way more than I care about what anybody thinks about me, I actually delight in it now. Like, I think it's hilarious. I love rolling through. Sometimes I turn down into ritzy neighborhoods around me and just drive through them just to mess with people, because I think it's hilarious to watch the looks on their face and the fact that they're so worried about, ooh, this guy with this dirty truck, who drives around with something like that? And I'm just sitting there laughing going, you don't even know what you're missing, So I think that that's a cool piece of it too, when overlanding becomes essentially like a part of your life, to the degree where you care more about like what other overlanders might think, right? And not to say that they're judgmental, because again, as I mentioned earlier, like we all love each other's rigs, but like I would rather drive past 100 people every day in my city that I live in, and then I'll be like, oh, what's up with him? But if I see one other person with a rooftop tent or with some big old tires and a lift, and we wave at each other, like, that's all I really care about, like getting the respect from that person, getting the wave from that person, that's worth 1,000 people giving me dirty looks and looking at me when I pull up in the parking lot at the grocery store, like, what the heck is wrong with this guy, right? And I love that. I think that's so cool that it sort of changes your view of how people perceive you and what's important to you from like a vanity or like a representation standpoint. So that's kind of the second part of what I was thinking about. And then the third thing that I think is definitely contributing to the popularity of overlanding is just satisfaction in general, right? And what I mean by this is, we all you go to college or you go to high school or whatever, and you have all these rules and you have all these things that these boxes you have to check, right? And sometimes your job is just kind of the same thing day in and day out. Your commute is sort of the same thing day in and day out. You're just kind of like in a fog, and you're just doing the things you have to do to pay the bills, but you're not enjoying it. You're not necessarily growing. Again, boss, if you're listening, I'm not talking about my current job. That's what I love about my current job, is that I'm actually really engaged and I really love what I do and I love the company I work for. But that's not the norm, right? I mean, I'm 39 years old, and this is probably like the coolest, best job I've ever had now, but the ones in the past were okay, and some of them had good aspects. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they were all bad. They all had some good things to them, right? But in the long run, they always ended up to have something bad, or it became super monotonous. So, all that stuff, again, kind of doesn't satisfy you, right? Like going to work and pushing a button or building a widget or whatever that isn't even for you and you don't really care about, and you're just there to put in the time and get paid. There's nothing satisfying about that, right? Like, you're not really learning or growing as a person. You're just kind of subsisting, if you will. But when you're overlanding, right, like you get a chance to do things that I feel like we used to do in the old days, right? Like 100 years ago or more. Like communing with nature, right? Just being out there and being present, and again, getting away from like the binging phones and the email notifications and the social media and everything. Just kind of getting out there and exploring, which I think is awesome. And again, kind of how I mentioned with the cooking piece, right? So like when you're at home, you're so busy that you just don't even have time to just like enjoy the company with your spouse, or like cook a real meal. Like, you just don't have time. But when you're overlanding, it's so much more satisfying to, like, even though it's a little bit less convenient, right? Because you're on the road and maybe your 2-burner grill isn't as, effective as your stove at home. there's just so much more satisfaction with saying like, hey, on this 2-burner little Coleman stove, I cooked a steak and I cooked this and I cooked asparagus and I did this stuff in the scuttle and it's so delicious and everything's good. It's just like everything is better when you're camping, right? And you guys might know what I'm talking about. If you've ever been camping, I don't know if it's because you're just like hungry or because like you collected firewood and set up all your stuff and you're kind of tired and so like the food is more satisfying. But like I've had, hot dogs or hamburgers, even just like simple stuff when I'm camping, and it tastes heavenly, right? Where when I have it at home, I take it for granted and it's just kind of like, it was okay. It was a fine dinner. Those hot dogs were all right. But when you're camping, man, maybe it's cooking it over a fire. Maybe it's, just being out in nature. But there's just something about it that makes everything better, right? It makes all the food taste better, makes that quiet time more relaxing because, again, you're not being interrupted. You're not in your normal environment. You're doing something different. And in addition to that, too, like, we get to explore and we get to learn from that stuff. And again, talking about, like, your job, I feel like in most jobs, a lot of jobs, you don't really get the chance to learn. You don't really get the chance to grow, right? Again, you come in, you push a button over and over and over again, and then you leave and you get a paycheck, right? And again, I'm not saying that's all of your jobs or my job or anything like that, but I think it's a majority of the jobs out there are pretty boring, right? They're pretty sucky. But when you're out on a trail, everything's different every time. Every time you take a different trail, there's new stuff to learn. You get to learn how to recover people. You get to learn how to use a winch. You get to learn how to overcome obstacles, right? Whether it be a water crossing or a downed tree or, any of that stuff. Like, before I had my chainsaw that I had now, I've really never used a chainsaw. So, like, the first time I used it, I was kind of like, how does this work? And do I put oil in it? And how, what do I need to do? And how do you tighten the chain? And, there's just all these things that I didn't know. And those are useful skills, right? Like, if I ever do need to use a chainsaw, which I do quite frequently now that I go on overlanding trips, now I'm much more comfortable with it. I understand how they work. I know how to maintain them. I know how to take care of them. And so there's a lot of benefits to just knowing like practical skills like that. And then, in addition to that too, when we're talking about satisfaction, you get to meet new people. You get to see new places. You get to do new things. And comparing that to the daily grind, right, of same commute, same vehicle, same 20-mile trip, each way, same people that you're exposed to every day. Now you get to get out there and you get to meet new people at restaurants. You get to, connect with other overlanders. You get to, have new experiences, do things that you've never done before, like the chainsaw thing, right? Like, you get to go out and you get to explore and you get to do you. You get to do whatever you want. And I just think that's super cool. So I think that is kind of the third thing that I think is a big component of why overlanding is exploding. So, now that I've gone through those few things, I'm just going to kind of put a bow on it and I'm going to wrap it up here for you guys. And I'm going to let you get on with your Monday. So, again, I feel like overlanding is one of those things that comes along every once in a while that gains a lot in popularity. And there probably will be people that are, more, use the term foverlander-ish, right? Like, there are definitely people that are just like, oh, that seems cool. I like the way those trucks look. I'm going to go outfit my vehicle that way. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. They're supporting our hobby, and then that's more money going into the banks of those companies, and then they make more stuff for us, right? But I feel like there's a difference, too, in the trend. I feel like there is a really amazing support community, and I feel like there are a ton of people that are just, like, genuinely passionate about it. Like, there's a ton of you guys out there that have, like, messaged me and talked to me, and, I mentioned there's the guy from Sweden that messages me, and he's super into it, and I love that. There's Fish and Tricks, the young lady that has been commenting on videos, and she's a lady overlander, which is awesome because I don't ever hardly see any of those, but good for you. Keep it up. And like, there's just so many people that are into it, and they're into it for the right reasons, right? Like, they're into it because they want to change things up. They want to get out of their daily grind, and they want to go explore, and they want to learn things. And so I think that's awesome, and I think that's why overlanding is exploding right now. So, again, thank you guys for listening to this whole thing. As I've said at the beginning of this video, please get in the comments. Please let me know what you guys think. Let me know if there are other factors that, maybe influenced you or that you think might be a big part of why overlanding is exploding. And, yeah, if you know other people that are interested in overlanding, if you've got some friends that you go with too, if they don't already follow the channel, definitely send them my way, because I'd love to, you know, have as many of your friends as possible hanging out, chatting in the comments, enjoying the videos. My goal with the channel, just so you guys know, is kind of just to grow it as much as possible. Like, I don't have any plans of stopping the content. If the Xterra ever dies, I'll probably buy an Armada or a QX80 or something like that, and I'll just keep going. So my plan is to be here for the long run, and I love all you guys. I appreciate you guys sticking with me and helping me grow the channel. But you know, I just hope to be your content provider, if you will, for the foreseeable future. So again, thank you guys for watching. If you're not already, click the subscribe button. Check me out on my other channels. Join the conversation. I'd love to talk to you. So thanks again. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good one.